then the dilemma is I've got to now hurt mom.
Yes.
And I love my mom. How do I hurt her? So the solution is I'm going to create chaos with mom. I'm going to start being obstinate. And when they say something, I'll snap back, or I'll slam doors when I don't get what I want, or I'll hole myself in my bedroom and not come out for dinner or not want to interact. If I do that enough, they'll be begging me to leave.
Uh-huh.
You know where I'm going with this?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I won't have to hurt them.
Yes. They
Not
will reject
realizing,
me. Yes.
not realizing that all that stuff they're doing is hurting that parent terribly. But
Right.
the kids don't think that way, right?
Nope.
So I'm going to make it so miserable for my trusted parent that they're going to practically be kicking me out of the house and saying, go live with your dad. Then I don't have to be responsible for hurting them. Hey, this is Diane Dirks.
And I'm Rick Voiles.
We've been working with co-parents in conflict for more than 2 decades. We've taught classes, written books, counseled parents, empathized and agonized a few times to help people make sense of their complicated families.
We were talking one day and it occurred to us that helping the most difficult cases comes down to one simple concept. Is one parent willing to let go of the tug-of-war rope, or is it worth it to hold on and fight?
So we invite you to take this journey with us each episode as we tackle the questions, should you hold on or let it go?
Welcome to Co-Parent Dilemmas, where we give you practical solutions to those impossible co-parents. Hi, Diane.
Hey, Rick. What's up?
What's up? What's up? Well, we just finished a terrible storm.
Yes, we did. Yes, it hit us pretty hard down here.
My heart goes out to a lot of cities.
Yeah. Yeah. We only got the wind part of it, but that was enough. A lot of trees down here on the island. We had no power here for 3 or 4 days. So,
wow.
But we were very lucky. My whining about not having air conditioning was very selfish of me. Once I was able to turn a television on and go, oh my gosh, some of these cities are just wiped out. So our prayers go out to any of you out there listening who were affected by the storm in a negative way, because it was a tough one, Helena.
Oh my goodness.
Helene. Was that Helene or Helena? Helene, I think. Yeah. And they say another one's out there brewing. So
I know.
Give us
it's
a break.
Scary. Yeah.
Yeah. So a couple of housekeeping things, Rick, that I want to go over today. Apple fees. Do you know what I mean by Apple fees?
Dun, dun, dun.
In the little ads that you've been running about Patreon and all that, I do a little thing like, how dare they charge extra fees? But I thought it was worth explaining a little bit now that I've learned more about what's happening. So if you want to become a Patreon VIP, you do that by going to patreon.com/CP Dilemmas. That gets you onto our Patreon page. And Patreon is a place where you can just give us money if you want to for nothing. You can become a VIP just because you want to contribute to the cause, which we would really appreciate. But I think most people give because there are perks. And the perks are things like our Hump Day Help group that meets every Wednesday at noon Eastern time. So every week, you get a link to come to our group. And we've had some great discussions with listeners. They ask questions. I try to answer what I can. But mainly it's them talking to each other and helping each other out, which is great. You get a list of episodes, episode index that you can access, and you can sort it by subject matter or whatever, which is a lot easier than going on your Apple or even on our website and scrolling through and trying to find something that's appropriate to what your issue is.
Yeah.
Right now, if you sign up to do a year, it's a little bit cheaper to do it per year than by month. Then if you do the yearly subscription, you get a digital copy of our I Am Non-Impossible book that we released a couple of years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And so all of that is great for $10 a month. Well, what Apple has started doing is if anybody is downloading an app onto their iPhone, iPad, or Mac from the iOS, App Store, and you download the Patreon app, and then you go through that app to purchase something like a VIP membership, because you're using an iOS app to do it, then Apple's going to charge you an extra 30%.
Wow.
30%.
Yeah.
That's like a lot, right? I found this out through Facebook. I purchased something through Facebook, and all of a sudden, even though the price was, $10, when I got charged, it was like $14 or something. I was like, what's happening? And then I learned about it. So they did that on Facebook a while ago. But starting in November, they're going to do it through Patreon and other podcast supported apps, because they're realizing podcasts are making some money. So now, because Apple is hurting, they're poor, they need a little extra. So they just decided to snatch up their 30%. Yep. Anyway, what I've learned is if you're okay with paying the 30%, then have at it. Maybe you have a lot of money and you don't care that Apple gets your 30%. But if you don't want to pay that, and we can't afford to pay it, that would cut into the money that we need just to operate, right? We're encouraging people to not use the iOS app to purchase a VIP membership through Patreon. So go to your desktop, or if you have an Android phone, that's fine. Go to your desktop that's not a Mac, or whatever you have to do. Maybe that's all you have is iOS products. Then I don't know what to tell you to do. Purchase through your friend's phone who has an Android.
Yeah, go to the library.
So you don't have, because the $10 a month turns into $13 and something, because they're adding that 30%, which is, to me, just a lot. I could see whether it was 6% or something. Yeah, 30%. And I guess they can afford to do that, because if they lose customers because of it, oh, well, there's, a million more customers behind them that might do it. So I just wanted to explain that a little bit further for our listeners, so it's not confusing. And we'll be mentioning that occasionally over the next couple of months, just so everybody's clear.
Very good.
Okay, before we talk about our subject today, I just want to read a couple of fan mails. Fan mail is something that if you get on our show notes, there's a little link there that you can text us, anything, something you want us to share on the show, or just let us know what you felt about an episode or whatever. We can't write you back there. So if you want to put your email in there to get an email response, you can do that. But most people just want to send us a few words about one of the episodes. So we got 2 of those this week, and I thought it would be helpful to read them, or I just want to let other people know what is being said about our episodes. But this is from someone in Denver, Colorado, said, "Thank you for this episode." This was the episode about mediation that we did a couple of weeks ago. "Thank you for this episode. I have benefited so much from your podcast. I now recommend it to my kindergarten families often." She must be a teacher. I don't know. "I had no idea about the joint discussion and mediation. 2 mediators during my divorce process about a year ago, and neither did it. I've filed motions recently, and I think it's so helpful to know again that it's confidential. Thank you for your work."
Cool.
How can you go to mediation and not be told it's not confidential?
I know.
That it is confidential.
It is. Yeah.
Like the hallmark.
Yes.
Of the mediation process this is confidential. Why is that important, Rick? Why do we need to know that as consumers?
And it goes back to your self-determination, to know that you have everything resource available to you to make your own decision. If you want to change your mind, if you want to think through something, if you want to make an offer and throw it out there and decide to take it back, it's all part of that power of you having control over your own future. It's
so that you can be free to say what you want without the fear of the other parent bringing up in court someday, well, in mediations, she did such and so, or in mediation, he called me a no good bleepity bleep, or in mediation, the mediator said this about us. None of that can come. None of that can come up in court, which gives you the freedom to negotiate. And like you said, negotiate, but then back off or change your mind or do, it gives you the freedom to brainstorm,
Yes.
right? And
Yep.
and we need to brainstorm. Sometimes we just need to spitball, so they say,
Yeah.
and talk things through. And maybe doing that, when you do that, a great idea emerges. Sometimes not.
Mm-hmm.
Without that, I don't know what they're doing.
A settlement conference.
I guess. So thank you very much. And I'm glad you're sharing it with your kindergarten families. That's awesome. Then I've got
Yes.
another one from Oklahoma. She said, I just listened to season 5, episode 1. That was the one about is he a narcissist or just immature? Remember that one?
Yeah. Yep.
She says, it really struck a chord, and it hurts my heart knowing that between my son's mother and her mother, they are setting my son up for failure. They both have the mindset of it's always someone else's fault, but theirs or his. Every teacher he has had in school has been a bad teacher when he gets bad grades, and so on and so on. Thank you so much for your time and all the advice.
Cool.
Yeah. So it's good to know. You can put that in the fan mail. Better yet, go to Apple or wherever you listen to the podcast, or even on our website, and write that as a review.
Mm-hmm.
And give us a 5-star rating. And again, the reason to do that is because that more stars you get, the more likely your podcast is going to come up in the search engine.
Yeah.
More quickly, so that people can find you. That's the reason to do it. All right. What I want to talk about today, Rick, is not research-based, but very few things that we talk about are research-based. I hate to say that. That sounds horrible. It sounds like, what?
Experience is the foundation of research.
Right. But there's a lot of things that can be researched and are researched and researched well. But there are more things that you really can't research in the divorce field because of all the variables. True. So many variables. Mm-hmm. So I think a lot of times as practitioners, we really do, as much as in therapy school, they tell you, be careful, don't get into that. Well, if it looks like a duck, it must be a duck, without asking all the right questions, right? Because you could make the wrong assumption and actually treat somebody in a way that they shouldn't be treated because you're basing one client's experience on a previous client's experience. Do you know what I'm saying? Yeah. Yep. So, we're cautioned about doing that. And I always am very cautious. But after doing this for 20 years and hearing the same stories over and over and over again, it's really hard to not lump them together and go, okay, so I don't ever say, oh, I know what this is, and just throw out advice. I ask a lot of questions, and then I might ask a client to try something. And it's kind of like, if you think you have an allergy, but you're not sure, and you take Benadryl and it goes away, what is your conclusion? I have an allergy. But if you take Benadryl and it doesn't go away, what is your conclusion? It wasn't an allergy. Okay. That's how I sort of operate. If I think something might be going on, I will suggest to a client, try this, say that. And then when they come back the next week and go, oh, that worked, then I assume I was right. Yes. If they come back and go, well, I did that and said that and it really fell flat. Okay, well, let's explore what else might be going on. To me, that's what experience does for you. Yes. Because a lot of what we do is not written in a textbook somewhere. Oh, true. Or it's not written in the research. So for our listeners, I want you to know that's why it's so important to have experienced practitioners who aren't going to look at you like there's a deer in the headlights because they've never heard this before and they have no idea what to tell you and they just ignore it and move on. Well, that's not helpful. No. So all of that to say, we got an email from Heather, and this is about her 14-year-old son. And some of the things that she says in this email, and I'm not going to read the whole thing because it's quite long, really resonated with me. And I could see the pictures of several of my clients in my head that I've had over the years where this has applied to them.
Yeah.
And I have given specific advice and they have come back and said, that was it. So I thought it might be worth throwing it out there, although I'm cautious because not everybody's going to fit this pattern and not every kid that we're going to talk about,
Sure.
will respond this way. So I just want to be cautious about that. But I'm thinking this might resonate with a lot of our parents who have preteens or young teenagers because this pattern does exist. So I would like to talk about it. Does that make sense?
It does.
Okay. So here's what Heather said. She said, so my 14-year-old son, who I've had a good relationship with and who has an IED, that's an independent education plan at school. We call them IEPs. I think that's what she means, IED, is refusing to come home. I think that means she's sharing custody with the other parent, and now he's at the other parent's house.
Sure.
And now he's saying, I'm not coming back.
Right.
He won't tell me for how long. He just says he wants to stay with his dad for now. Our divorce has been finalized since 2022. Our custody arrangement is 60-40, with me having 60 and dad having 40. We came up with an alternate agreement for my 14-year-old this summer with his input because he was struggling emotionally. For him, we agreed to do 50-50, 1 week on, 1 week off, which was working well. Prior to my son refusing to come home, my ex sent me aggressive and threatening emails trying to change custody for all the children. Because of prior drug abuse and emotional abuse and behavior that he and his new wife have engaged in, I don't think 50-50 is best. This appears to be in retaliation of that. So I don't know if she means that they agreed on 50-50 and then she backed off of it because of drug abuse, and emotional abuse. Anyway.
My impression is he was trying for 50-50 for all the other children.
Oh, I see.
And she agreed with the 50-50 for the boy, or the 14-year-old. Yep.
So she goes on to say that she's reached out to her attorney for help, blah, blah, blah. She said, my biggest concern, greater than my own pain and heartbreak, is the well-being of my children. My attorney probably has an interest in continuing a case and earning money. Well, I don't know, maybe. I'll do whatever needed to advocate and fight for my kids if that's what is best. But after listening to some of your podcasts of parents in similar situations, part of me wonders if I just surrender and stay consistent and loving and open and reassuring to my son, who I think is just trying to gain his dad's and stepmom's approval.
Yes.
So number one, Heather, thank you for listening.
Yeah.
Because this is one of those emails where it starts out as a question and then she answers it herself.
Uh-huh.
Which means she's sitting there going, what would Diane and Rick say? And then she says, oh, I think this is what they would say. Okay, I'm going to do this. Thank you. Sort of, that's the impression that I get, which really warms my heart. That means that people are listening and they're taking it in and they're comparing their own situations to other people's that we've talked about and say, yeah, well, I think what I just need to do is, surrender, stay consistent, loving, open, and reassuring to my son. Yes. But I think I want to explain why.
Okay.
And this goes back to, like I said, having had this situation several times. There are aspects of what she says that ring true to me in other cases. She starts out saying, my 14-year-old son and I have had a good relationship up to this point. That's the first pattern piece that I have stored in my head. So you have a kid who so far the relationship has been great. In fact, I've had clients say, up until age 12 or 13, they have told me, I don't know what I would do without you, mom or dad. The other parent's house is chaotic, or, they don't really understand me, or they don't listen. And there's really nothing you can do about that other than comfort them and say, yeah, I know it's hard, but, I'm here for you. Right. Mm-hmm. And so that parent who's hearing that feels pretty good. Okay. I have a good bond with my child and he seems to open up to me. And I seem to be the parent he trusts. And not that you want to win that battle, because it's not really a battle. It's just, okay, I feel like I'm doing a good job.
Yes.
Right? With my child. I hate that he's suffering over at the other house. I hate that he doesn't have a good relationship with the other parent. But as for me, I feel like, okay, I must be doing something right, that my child is telling me these things. Then without warning, they come back and they are not, it's like the aliens have taken my child and replaced him or her with somebody I don't recognize overnight.
Yeah.
Suddenly they come back, they're obstinate. They don't want to engage with you. They shut themselves off into their rooms. They say angry things about the situation, maybe not about you personally, but I hate living in a divorced family. I hate going back and forth, and right away, the trusted parent starts going, uh-oh, what's happening? And it's common to think, uh-oh, the other parent is putting them up to this.
Right.
Which they could be, and probably are in some respects. Now, I know in Georgia, we have that weird age thing where when a child turns 14, they have the right to make an election, say that they would rather live primarily with one parent over the other, which causes a lot of controversy in this state, by the way, because no one really knows what election means.
Right.
Is that verbal? Does it have to be in writing? Does he have to tell a judge? That's not really clear in the statute. The child can say it, but a judge can disagree with the child if the judge doesn't think, there's all kinds of nuances to it. But what that means, at least in this state, is that when a child starts becoming 12 or 13, the parent who feels like the child doesn't trust them that much, or maybe they're at odds with, starts saying things like, when the child gets upset about something, well, in just a couple of years, when you're 14, you can decide you don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah.
They might not go into a lot of great detail, right? But they might just say something like that. Some parents are really blatant. Well, if you come live with me when you're 16, I'll buy you a car.
Yep.
Because that parent is feeling the child pulling away from them. Because when your kids become young teenagers, they start thinking for themselves. Because they're supposed to. That's what we call the differentiation process, or they are individuating from their parents. They're supposed to do that. Hey listeners, co-parenting during the holidays with someone who abuses alcohol can be emotionally draining and far more taxing than just the seasonal expenses. Amidst the present wrapping and the hot cocoa pouring, you might find yourself constantly worrying about your kids' safety when they're with their other parent. As a co-parenting expert, I've worked with many parents facing the same dilemma, and one tool I often recommend is SoberLink. SoberLink lets you know immediately when your co-parent is drinking. It's a high-tech breathalyzer designed to prove sobriety during parenting time. Your co-parent tests at scheduled times throughout the day, built-in facial recognition makes sure it's them, tamper sensors flag any cheating attempts, and the results are sent directly to your phone or email so you can be confident your kids are with a sober parent. The holidays are stressful enough, so let SoberLink alleviate some of that anxiety. Visit www.soberlink.com/dilemmas to learn more and get $50 off your device. So I think this is why it's so confusing for parents like Heather, because you're like, is this because of his age? Or is it something I did? Or is the other parent promoting this? Like, what is going on? So there are some kids, and I'm not saying all, but I've seen several of them in my practice, especially when they have a particularly good relationship with one parent and a rocky relationship with the other. And Heather says this at the end of this email. I think he's just trying to gain his dad's and stepmom's approval. Especially when you have a kid who wants so badly for the other parent to love him or her, approve of them. They want the same kind of relationship with that parent as they have with the trusted parent. And they want it so bad that when that parent says things like, well, and I suspect Heather's ex might be saying, well, if your mom would just agree to this, blah, 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 all this conflict would stop, or who knows what he's saying, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're taking that in. And now this child might be thinking, well, I know how to save this. I will be the hero kid.
Mm.
I will say to my dad, how about if I come over here and live with you? Sometimes that's not even a suggestion of the parent, but that the
Mm-hmm.
child recognizes how that might fix something in that relationship with the other parent.
Yeah.
However, here's the dilemma for the child or the teen. I know if I say something like that to my dad, and I'm saying dad in this situation because this is what Heather's bringing up. If I say something like that to dad, hey, what if I come over here and live? Dad's eyes will light up.
Mm-hmm.
The child thinks because he really wants me to be with him. He doesn't maybe realize that his dad's eyes light up because that means a win against mom.
Right.
Or the child may realize that, but it doesn't matter. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
he gets the win and he loves me for being the hero.
Right.
But then the dilemma is I've got to now hurt mom.
Yes.
And I love my mom. How do I hurt her? So that the solution for that is I'm going to create chaos with mom. This kid sounds like he didn't create any chaos. He just said, I'm not coming home. That's not what a lot of kids do. So her situation is a little bit different than what a lot of kids do. A lot of kids will say, you know what? I'm going to start creating some chaos with my trusted parent. I'm going to start being obstinate. And when they say something, I'll snap back, or I'll slam doors when I don't get what I want, or I'll hole myself in my bedroom and not come out for dinner or not want to interact. If I do that enough, they'll be begging me to leave.
Uh-huh.
You know where I'm going with this?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I won't have to hurt them.
Yes. They
Not
will reject
realizing,
me. Yes.
not realizing that all that stuff they're doing is hurting that parent terribly.
Right.
But the kids don't think that way, right?
Nope.
So I'm going to make it so miserable for my trusted parent that they're going to practically be kicking me out of the house and saying, go live with your dad, and then I don't have to be responsible for hurting them.
Yes.
And again, I'm not saying this happens in all situations, but it happens in a lot of situations. I think in Heather's situation, the kid couldn't even bear doing that.
Mm.
So he just stayed at dad's because that was easier than seeing mom's hurt face. But there are a lot of kids who will do what I describe. And so the question is, what is the answer? How do you handle that? Because for the trusted parent, they would end up in my office like in tears going, oh my God, what happened to my kid? He's turned into this horrible person. And all of a sudden he acts like he hates me and he doesn't want to be around me anymore. And suddenly that he's choosing the other parent who just told me 3 months ago that, he couldn't stand to be around. And I'm like, what is happening? And you want to beg them or you want to punish them, right? And,
Yeah.
I'm all about consequences for disrespect and all of that stuff. But in this particular situation, what I usually advise, and I just advised a client of this last week, which is then when I got this email, I said, okay, something in the stars is telling me to talk about this, right?
Yep. Yep.
So what I tell them to say is next time something like that happens, sit down with them, not in the heat of the moment, but maybe the next day when things are calm and go, hey, that blow up last night made me think, based on what you've told me before about your relationship with the other parent kind of being rocky, and now all of a sudden you're blowing up here. That's just not like you. And I kind of want to let you know that you don't have to act like you hate me in order to repair something with the other parent.
Mm-hmm.
It's not going to work with me because I know this isn't you. If you think you want to spend more time with the other parent because you so badly want to make things right there, I completely get that. And we'll negotiate that. You don't have to leave me. You don't have to hate me. You don't have to slam the door in my face. You don't have to call me. You don't have to do any of that for this to be okay. because you and I are pretty solid. We're going to be fine no matter what happens. No matter what happens,
Yeah.
we're going to be fine. So this isn't necessary. Let's talk about what it is you want. Now, when I've said that to parents in distress, they're like sweating bullets because that's the last thing they want to say.
Right.
Why do you think they're afraid to say that?
The answer they're afraid they might get,
Which is,
I want to go live with dad.
but it's better to do it this way.
Well, that's true, right? Yep. I mean, it's the way you're describing it, it's going to happen either way. Let's do it cleanly, healthy.
Well, yeah. Let's preserve our relationship. But you know what, Rick?
Huh.
In the several cases I'm thinking of when the parent went back and said that to the child, every time the parent has come back to me, and I'm talking a handful of times, 6 times, I don't know. I don't have 6 fingers, by the way.
That's a big hand.
Every time they've come back and went, wow, when I said that, they like burst into tears.
Wow.
Because finally somebody like burst the bubble. The floodgates open. Why? Why do you think the floodgates open?
Well, they've been carrying this burden on their own. They felt like it was their fight that they had to figure out a solution and strategize for.
And they actually thought they were fooling the trusted parent.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when they realized they didn't, and that they're going to let me off the hook, and they're going to actually let me go over there, oftentimes, and I can't remember each situation's exact outcome, but oftentimes it would be like, I really don't want to go there. I just want my dad to love me.
Yeah.
And then you can have a conversation about where you live doesn't create love.
Right.
Where you live, whether you have a car or not, because so many kids I've seen go for the, I'll buy you a car, you have your own room, or whatever the promise is, they do it. And within 6 months, they're going, okay, I got that. But I didn't get what I really wanted, which was my parent.
Right. Approval, acceptance, love. Yes.
Now what I got was strings attached because they keep bringing up the fact that they got me a car and I better watch my P's and Q's. And now all it did was create more control. But sometimes, Rick, a teenager has to figure that out on their own by going.
Okay.
And that's hard, but I would encourage Heather, instead of, I'm going to go to court and I'm going to fight for my kids and I'm going to make sure he comes back and blah, 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 isn't really showing him that you're the pillar that he thought you were. It's showing him that you're frantic, that you need him more than he needs his dad.
Oh, wow.
Does that make sense?
That made a lot of sense. That was powerful. Yeah.
So what I'm saying to Heather is, if you can talk to him, hopefully he will talk to you. Say, hey, listen, buddy, that's where you want to be. Let's negotiate. Let's talk about it. You can't don't run away. That's not how you deal with conflict, to just run away and then not talk about it. Let's talk about it. If that's where you want to be, great. I'm thinking that doesn't mean if you live there, you have to like cut me out completely. Right.
Right.
Let's negotiate what our relationship is going to look like, because you don't have to hate me to get what you want from your dad. And be careful, hating me, you might end up not getting what you want from your dad. And then where does that leave us?
Yeah, you've cut me off and then you don't have your dad. Now you're stuck.
Let's preserve our relationship no matter what happens.
Yeah.
Let's make sure that's good. And the way to do that is to let me help you get what you think you want and need. And there's no sense in telling him this ain't going to work. You're going to go over there and dad's not going to be the parent you want him to be. And you're going to be disappointed and you're going to be crawling back to me with your tail between your legs.
No,
that could happen, but you don't say that, because 14-year-olds want to be treated like adults. even
Yeah.
though they're not. They just do, right? They want to be respected the same way you would respect an adult decision. So you kind of have to give them that and say, okay, this is what you think you want. Let's try that. Now, Heather's concern is that there's drug abuse going over there and emotional abuse. And honestly, if you can't prove it, then it ain't an issue.
Right.
I hate to
But it
say that,
does.
but the reality is, if you can't prove it, it's not an issue. So I get what you're saying. I don't want him to be over there that much because of what he might experience, but what are you going to do about it? If you don't have good, solid proof, and this is where your attorney comes in, going to court isn't going to do you any good. And if a child is old enough and tells the judge, I want to go spend more time with my dad, they're probably going to let him.
Yeah.
So I just want to
Right.
give a heads up those trusted parents who are shocked all of a sudden that their child is turning on them. If you have the good relationship that you say you have, and I'm trusting that that's true, you have to have faith in that. You have to trust that. You could actually blow it if you start acting unstable and then the child goes, well, maybe that wasn't what I thought it was.
Hmm.
I'm going to go to court. I'm going to make you come back. This isn't right. Your dad's a drug addict, blah, 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 all the vitriol that goes with that. And the child's going, I thought mom and I had a good relationship. Now I'm not so sure because look how she's acting.
Yeah. Well, and let me push back a little bit.
Please.
Because a couple of things here. One, she mentioned her 16-year-old daughter, which this has already happened, and her daughter cut her off completely. Mm-hmm. I'm sure she's afraid that that's repeating the process, and we don't know what she did in regards to the 16-year-old. But I was thinking about the child. I'm wondering, all right, the child feels stuck and hopeless or helpless and has to come up with a strategy and comes up with this strategy. Okay, I'm not coming back. But have you ever had the experience where the child, mom does fight and does win? The child feels as though I can't fight this, so I'm going to go ahead and take my best survival approach and go ahead and live with dad and do the best I can until it's over. But in wishing that somebody would fight for him, wishing somebody would come to his rescue. Mom, why didn't you fight for me? Mom, why didn't you rescue me from this?
Rick, that's an excellent question.
Oh, dear.
Yes. The answer is yes. So it occurs to me that in Heather's situation, there very well could be alienation going on. The 14-year-old, if she says what I'm suggesting she say to him, I think that's the best way to find out whether he really needs her to fight for him or not.
Yes, because you asked the question, what do you want?
Yeah.
And if the child can articulate that, yes.
How can I help you get what you want? Of course, this has to be a private conversation that dad's not listening in on. Right. To say, let's just figure out what to do about our relationship. And whatever you need, I'm going to help negotiate for things that you want. And we hope that's when he falls apart in tears because this is what I really want, but it's the only thing I know how to do. Okay, that might indicate that he wants you to fight for him. You could say, well, the only option I have is to go to court and try to change this. Is that what you're asking me to do? And he may say, no, don't do that because that'll just make dad really mad. Well, how do you interpret that? These are complicated questions. Just going to court doesn't mean you'll win.
Right.
And I've seen cases where the child has even said to the parent, yeah, fight for me, go to court. And then they do. And then they get in front of a GAL and they fold.
Right. They cave in.
Yeah. They tell the GAL, well, yeah, I do really want to live with my dad because they're afraid to say to any stranger. It was easy to tell mom, but it was really hard to tell a total stranger that what my dad's telling you is a big fat lie. So, those cases are really, really hard.
Well, yeah, because if I'm worried about my dad and the GAL asks me, what do I want to do? I'm afraid it's going to get back to dad. And if dad finds out that I told this official that I really didn't want, then, oh no, I'm going to lie. I'm going to lie to
That's
the
stuck.
GAO.
So unfortunately, the child has a decision to make that either way, it's not comfortable.
No.
What I'm saying, and I love that you push back because I want you to, but what I'm saying is if I, as a 14-year-old, decide this is how I need to play this so that I get everything I think I could possibly get from my dad, I'm going to do it because I don't want to ever later go, what if I would have done this? Would things have gotten better?
Right.
So maybe I have to try it. And if it doesn't work out, at least I'll know. Some 14-year-olds are that wise. Some aren't. Some are wowed by the love bombing.
Right.
Some are scared. She mentioned emotional abuse. Maybe they just don't want the emotional abuse and they perceive that if I do this, I won't get the emotional abuse anymore, but nothing could be further from the truth.
Right. Yep.
That's not how you fix emotional abuse. Just do everything they want me to do. So the child will eventually find out that didn't work. So I can say with confidence that if things really aren't okay over there, the child will figure it out. And the child is going to need a pillar to return to.
Right. A pillar that they hadn't beat up several times in order. Yes.
Yeah. So you don't want those beatings to go on too long before you call it out and say, hold on, this is not the child I raised. I don't know who you are, but whoever this is, this is a strategy and you don't need to do this.
So let me reframe it just a little bit because it occurred to me a similar circumstance that I went through. So first of all, the thing I like most about what you're describing is the scenario is inevitable. The scenario is the child's going to live with dad. Okay. But how that gets accomplished are two different ways. One, this way, the relationship with mom is maintained, is secured. The child may break down crying and say, I don't want to go over there. But together, you both figure out a strategy. Now you're colluding with each other. I mean, that strengthens the bond. And he ends up living over there anyways. But if mom fights it, or if mom just continues to let the beatings, continue, then when that child finally realizes that what he wanted from dad isn't possible, the work that he's going to have to do to repair the relationship with mom, he doesn't have the skills for. That's going to be very hard. He's going to feel like I can't go back to mom. Right. Now, I because I hurt her too much. But with this way, the bridge to cross to back over to mom is a very short bridge, and you don't need very many skills.
Needs to stay intact. Yes. And that's a good point, because when the child does come back, and it might be soon, it might be years from now, I don't know.
Yeah.
The answer is not you couldn't make it happen with your dad. The answer is your dad was compromised. Your dad was not capable of engaging in a relationship that you wanted, which is a much different thing, because when oftentimes kids feel like they failed.
Oh, yeah.
I did everything my dad wanted me to do.
I'm not lovable enough.
Still didn't work out. So therefore I didn't do something right. And so the trusted parent has to be prepared to forgive.
Yes.
And I'm not saying, don't get me wrong, Rick, I'm not saying any of this is easy. One of the hardest things a parent will ever have to do is endure what we're talking about in this episode. However, so I don't want to sound trite, that, well, just do this and it'll all get fixed. But I do want to say that you have to just maintain the bond for the child's sake, even when it hurts you immensely to watch it happen. And we have said this to truly alienated parents.
Yes.
Right? Mm-hmm. That it's clear that alienation is going on, but for whatever reason, the court doesn't see it, or they don't see it as being egregious enough to make changes. And so it's allowed to go on, and the parent left in the dust has to reconcile with it and go, what do I do? And you just say, I'm going to keep being who I am, have my integrity intact, keep being that pillar, as painful as it is, because when my child returns to me, and he or she will eventually, it will be like the friend that you haven't seen for 10 years. And when you see him, it's like you never left them.
Yes.
And we say this all the time, but you'll spend way more time with your kids as adults than you ever did when they were kids.
Yes.
And that's not to say, just ignore this, ignore the hurt, because you're losing out on time with your precious child. And I get that. But fighting is risky. But I think there aren't any risks in telling your child that no matter what, you and I are going to be okay.
I like that.
I don't see any risk.
No, I like that. Yep.
This is what you want to do. I will support you. However, it needs to be negotiated because I am your parent. And I would say do that before you fight, because if you fight, you might be sealing the deal that they'll just say, well, it's just easier if I don't see her anymore.
Yeah.
But if you at least try to say, listen, I'll support it. Let me help you. Let's negotiate it. Let's come up with a plan that allows you to spend time with me, but spend more time with the other parent if that's what you want. Let's negotiate that. Let them off the hook of this is all on you.
Yeah.
And I think you have a bigger chance of preserving the relationships because of what I know about relationships in general and research on relationships in general. You can't go wrong when you become an advocate for the relationship, no matter what outside forces are trying to intervene.
I like it. I like it a lot.
That makes sense. Okay.
Yep.
Any other devil's advocate questions, you devil?
Nope, it's the devil's break time.
I'm teasing. Just so everybody knows, Rick did ask permission to call me out before we recorded, and I said, sure.
Surprise.
Because I was laying out my plan and expecting him to say, okay, let's do it. And he was like, well, I don't know. I might need to question this, which is great. So, all right, Heather, thank you so much for sharing this with us. And I hope that was helpful. I know there's a lot more going on than what you shared in your email, but I think I kind of have the gist about what is happening. And I'm sorry that you're going through that.
Yes, indeed. I'm sorry. And I'm also very sorry that the things turned out the way they did with your daughter, 16. Don't give up hope, though.
Right. Exactly. All right. Good talking with you. And we'll meet up again next week.
All right. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye. The information contained in this podcast is generic. It must not be misconstrued as constituting legal or psychological advice. Decisions relevant to any specific individual, family system, or case require the direct evaluation of skilled, child-centered professionals.